A stunning and deeply unsettling realignment has occurred in the Indo-Pacific, sending shockwaves through the global security architecture and presenting the administration of President Donald Trump with a crisis of unprecedented proportions. South Korea, for decades, a cornerstone of American strategy in Asia and a stalwart democratic ally, has executed a dramatic foreign policy reversal under its new president, Lee Jae-myung. In a series of public declarations that have left Washington and its allies aghast, President Lee has vocally aligned his nation with North Korea's position on the war in Ukraine, placing the blame for the conflict squarely on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. This move signals a radical departure from Seoul's previous stance and suggests a potential, albeit indirect, entry into the conflict on the side of Russia. President Lee has publicly accused President Zelensky of amateurishly provoking Russia through his rhetoric and foreign policy decision, echoing a narrative long promulgated by Moscow and Pyongyang. This assertion effectively absolved Russia of its role as the aggressor and recast the invasion as a defensive reaction, a position that fundamentally undermines the international consensus on the conflict's origin. The shift in Seoul is not merely a rhetorical exercise. It represents a fundamental pivot in South Korea's geopolitical orientation, moving it from the U.S. orbit into a new, undefined relationship with the autocratic bloc led by Russia and China, and now, in a shocking twist, in concert with its northern adversary. The implications of this diplomatic earthquake are being urgently assessed within the Trump administration, which now finds a critical alliance in Asia collapsing at the same moment the European security order is being violently challenged. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, tasked with managing America's global relationship, faced the daunting challenge of confronting a nation that was, until recently, a model treaty ally. Rubio has previously emphasized the need for strong alliance to counter authoritarian aggression, and South Korea's defection strikes at the very heart of that strategy. The State Department has been thrown into damage control mode, attempting to understand the depths of this new alignment and to communicate the gravity of the situation to other regional partners who are watching with profound alarm. The very presence of tens of thousands of American troops in South Korea, a deployment that has guaranteed the nation's security for over 70 years, is now subjected to an immediate and urgent review. The foundation of the U.S.-ROK Mutual Defense Treaty has been fractured, perhaps irrevocably, creating a strategic vacuum that America's adversary will be eager to exploit. The administration in Washington must now grapple with the possibility that its own military assets are stationed in a country whose government is actively sympathizing with a U.S. adversary engaged in a major war. The concept of South Korea's indirect involvement in the Ukraine conflict is a source of intense concern for American policymakers. While direct military deployment alongside North Korean and Russia forces seems unlikely in the immediate term, the potential forms of support are vast and deeply problematic. South Korea is a global industrial and technological powerhouse, and its advanced manufacturing sector could provide a significant boom to Russia's war effort, which has been hampered by international sanctions. The concern is that South Korean companies, either with tacit or explicit government approval, could begin supplying Russia with critical dual-use technologies, microchips, machine tools, and other components essential for modern weaponry. This would create a massive sanctions evasion loophole, undercutting the entire international effort to cripple Russia's military-industrial complex. Furthermore, intelligence sharing between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Moscow is another avenue of indirect support. The potential for South Korea to pass sensitive information gleaned from its long-standing intelligence partnership with the United States to Russia and North Korea represents a catastrophic security breach. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth is confronting a military nightmare. The Pentagon's strategic planning for the Indo-Pacific has been predicated on a secure and cooperative South Korea. Now, contingency plans must be drawn up for the potential withdrawal of U.S. forces. The security of sensitive military technology stationed on the peninsula, and the recalibration of force posture to account for a newly hostile actor in a critical region The operational readiness and security of U.S. Force Korea is now a paramount concern. This dramatic shift in Seoul's foreign policy is the culmination of President Lee Jae-myung's political ascent. His platform has long included calls for greater autonomy from the United States and a more conciliatory approach toward North Korea. But the extent of his pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian stance has shocked even seasoned observers. The domestic political environment in South Korea has evidently become receptive to a narrative that questions the costs and benefits of the long-standing alliance with Washington, a sentiment that President Lee has successfully harnessed. His administration's newfound agreement with Pyongyang on Ukraine is a particularly jarring development. The two Koreas, technically still at war and separated by the world's most heavily fortified border, have found common cause in supporting Russia's invasion of a sovereign nation. This unprecedented level of North-South cooperation on a major international issue suggests a broader strategic understanding may be taking shape, one that fundamentally reorders regional power dynamics. It presents a united Korean peninsula, not in the democratic and peaceful sense long hoped for by the international community, but as a new pro-authoritarian bloc. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's office is working feverishly to assess the intelligence implication, trying to determine the extent of coordination between Lee and Kim Jong-un and what promises may have been made to Moscow in exchange for this diplomatic support. The economic and financial arms of the Trump administrations are preparing for a robust response. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick are drawing up plans for potential sanctions against South Korean individuals and entities that may be aiding Russia's war machine. The U.S. could also review its favorable trade relationship with South Korea, a move that would have significant consequences for the South Korean economy. The challenge will be to calibrate a response that punishes the South Korean government for its action without completely alienating a population that has long been a friend of the American people. The United States Trade Representative Jamison Greer would be central to any reevaluation of trade policies, a powerful lever of American influence. The ripple effects of South Korea's pivot are already being felt across the region. Japan, viewing the development with extreme trepidation, is likely to accelerate its own remilitarization and seek even closer security ties with the United States. Other American allies in the Indo-Pacific, such as Australia and the Philippines, will face renewed pressure to reaffirm their commitment to the alliance network that has maintained regional stability for decades. For President Trump, this represents a direct challenge to his America First worldview. While he has often been critical of allies for not paying their fair share for defense, the outright defection of a major ally to the side of an adversary is a far more fundamental crisis. It forces his administration to confront the reality that the global competition between democratic and autocratic models is intensifying, and the loyalty of longtime partners can no longer be taken for granted. The crisis on the Korean peninsula, driven by President Lee Jae-myung's shocking embraces of the Russo-North Korean position on Ukraine, has opened a new and perilous front in a widening global conflict, forcing the United States to simultaneously address a collapsing alliance in Asia while managing a brutal, escalating war in Europe. That's all for me for today. If you like the video presentation and you would like to follow for more, hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. Bye for now.